Time to upgrade your adventure with an RV from Motorsportsland. Don't put off making exciting memories and exploring the many outdoor hideaways right here in Utah. Come in today and see how Motorsportsland can help you get away, or visit motorsportsland.com.
Hot Tub Factory Outlet is now open in Draper. Don't wait months for your hot tub. Get it now. Enjoy that outdoor deep soaking experience you've been thinking about all year. Whether you have limited space or lots of room, you can have that relaxation you've been wanting today. Shop Utah's newest selection of Viking hot tubs. They're all on display at the beautiful new showroom. Best pricing in Utah and no wait time while supplies last. Hot Tub Factory Outlets at hottubfactoryoutlets.com.
Inside Sources. Next is Now.
It is time for Next is Now, looking at what's coming, what's right ahead of us, and how it's impacting us right here today. And as we've been discussing, the California Governor Gavin Newsom is facing a recall election today. He could become only the second governor ever recalled in the Sunshine State, the Golden State. Well, we'll save the other for Florida. Florida might be offended by that. Of course, Gray Davis in 2003 was recalled and replaced by Arnold Schwarzenegger, who went on not just to serve that term, but was reelected. We're going to look at what's really going on in the Golden State and what it means for all of us right here in the state of Utah. And to help us do that, we've brought in our special Inside Sources host for this segment, our producer Kelly Pierce, a longtime California resident. You know your way around the political block down there in California. So as you look at this recall election, what is it that we should actually be looking for as we get to the closing of the polls in a few hours and then starting to look at results?
Well, first off, I am a proud ex-Californian. I just have to say that right now.
Be very clear about that.
Well, I think the first thing is, California is definitely a deep blue state, but as we know, the polls recently have been very off across the country. And there are a lot of people who are really angry at Governor Newsom because of how he's handled the pandemic, shut businesses down, especially small businesses, violated his own health orders, that famous dinner at the French Laundry with people from healthcare companies. There's some other issues like, homelessness is just awful in the state. You have housing shortage, taxes are super high. So there are people, this has been brewing for a while. And then, of course, the pandemic just ignited this recall. Yeah, and I think that's one of the interesting things, as we were talking with Scott Rasmussen in our last segment. It seems to be something that is not just igniting Republican passion in California and across the country for that matter, but it's also ignited a lot of folks on the left and within the Democratic Party as well. Absolutely. Now, of course, the Democratic establishment is trying to frame this as the Republican recall. However, I know plenty of people, one person I can think of in particular, that worked on the Dennis Kucinich campaign, the very a former guest here, also a very left-wing Democratic congressman. They are all in on the recall. There are a lot of Democrats who are running to replace Gavin Newsom because they don't like his leadership. Yeah, I think we have 45 people on the ballot. 46 people. 46. So there's Democrats, there's Republicans, Libertarians. Got a little bit of everything. And so just if you haven't been following this race closely, so the way this works is you vote yes or no for the recall. And if enough people vote yes, then you also tick a box for one of those 46 candidates, and it's no majority required. Whoever's in front when the last ballot is counted is declared the governor of the state of California. So there's kind of two components to it. Have you heard any rumblings from some of your inside sources from down in California? We always trust those. In terms of how things are shaping up, you mentioned the polling is always hard in a recall election. It's really, really difficult for me to really gauge this. I mean, if you had to twist my arm, I'd say probably the governor pulls this out. Probably survives. Yeah, absolutely. I think what people need to keep in mind is California just has rampant ballot harvesting by special interest groups. And this goes from the city council race all the way up to the governor's race. And you have people who, I've had friends who said, I got like 4 or 5 ballots sent to my house because they sent them to all inactive voters. And this is a largely mail-in vote. And you can imagine somebody could take it, right? And I'm from the LA County area, and their registrar of voters has admitted they don't check the signatures to verify these ballots. Wow. So that's an interesting component. It's absolutely known in the state that this happens, but it's not really well reported either.
Yeah, and I think that's a fascinating thing, and this is one of those where I think we've already seen dueling statements and press conferences going on as to irregularities in the voting today, both those saying it's absolutely secure, 100% right, and those who are saying, hey, there's some shenanigans going on. This may not be certifiable in terms of an election. And so that's an interesting component. I think one of the other interesting things that I've been kind of keeping my eye on today is the fact that Joe Biden won California by 30 points. I mean, that is a massive, probably the biggest win, I think, for Joe Biden in the presidential run. And yet here we are with a Democratic governor. President Biden was there yesterday campaigning for Mr. Newsom, and yet we're still having this, what could be a pretty close recall election.
Right, absolutely. And it's interesting. I mean, Kamala Harris, who is now our vice president, she was senator in California. And however, when she ran for president, California didn't exactly back her up. She's not exactly a popular figure there. And a lot of Californians were recently, I wouldn't say they were supportive of President Biden. They were just anti-President Trump in a lot of blue, heavily populated areas. Then, of course, you have that, ballot harvesting going on as well. I know, not that it doesn't happen on the Republican side, but they're a smaller piece of the pie there. So you don't really have the support necessarily for the president. They just don't like the previous one.
Yeah, and so fascinating in terms of how that all plays out. And then finally, Kelly, before I let you go back to producing duties, how does this impact us here in the state of Utah? What should Utahns be looking for or gleaning from this kind of recall election? It's obviously very expensive to have a recall election. What do we learn from this?
Well, one thing that we have to think about is whether we want recall as well in the state of Utah, because there are plenty of people who don't like their city councilman, their state representative. They think that things are going wrong, and they would like a mechanism to get them out of office quicker. We talked with Randy Economy, who used to be the senior advisor for the California recall earlier, a couple months ago on the show. So that's something that we have to think about as well. Also, just be very grateful that we have a mail-in ballot system that works here in Utah. I always have to explain to my friends in California people in Utah, that the California mail-in ballot system is not so tidy.
A little bit looser guns there going down in California. Kelly Pierce, our producer here on Inside Sources, great reporter in her own right, and great information as always. Kelly, thanks for stepping in and helping us navigate California today. And I think some of the important things for us to think through with this, Kelly mentioned this idea of, do we want recalls in the state of Utah? They are very expensive. They can be incredibly divisive. And are the terms the right terms? Do we have extraordinary circumstances or situations where we should look to recalls to settle things when maybe someone is way out of line or way out of the norm, or there's extreme frustration with a particular elected official? But those are all things we have to keep in mind there. And then, of course, I think the broader application, as Scott Rasmussen pointed out, that it'll be interesting to see how tonight goes in California, and then the impact that might have on places like Virginia, who has a governor's race going on. Again, it's been in Democratic hands for some time there in Virginia. Will this hint at anything there or any underlying frustrations by voters? Also, we will ramp up very rapidly into the 2022 midterm election, which will be very important for President Biden and for Democrats, and of course for Republicans trying to get back at least some levers of power, whether in the House or the Senate. A lot of these things are going to have impact there. And I think it goes back to some of these numbers that we just have so many people who are more afraid of a Republican or a Democrat than they are the Taliban or China. And that says something about the kinds of conversations we're having and not having in our country. And we're going to talk more about that coming up at 2:50. You don't want to miss it. We're going to step aside for bottom of the hour news. When we come back, we're going to talk a really crucial conversation. Liddy Huntsman and Nate Checketts join us to talk about beyond just the type 1 diabetes. Let's find out about it coming up next.